So on supply chain then, Adam, as somebody working for a service provider, how important is that supply chain in the cybersecurity risk?
I mean, supply chain risk is absolutely fundamental. It's been a kind of growth area of focus for security analysts for quite some time now, because I've been working on it for the last kind of 5 years. You'll start to see it coming out in terms of mandates, commercial requirements. People have a much stronger view of what that means. I think to kind of pick up on the IoT and OT space, it's just an interesting example of that. It's a really interesting area because a lot of manufacturers and providers are relatively new, relatively specialised, and so don't have that established industry reputation. When you've looked at kind of guidance from NCSC and other kind of national security authorities, there's been an awful lot around going. You need to look at their engineering practices. You need to look at how they're building it in, whether kind of you're in their target market to understand if you can safely deploy that. And certainly what we've seen is some challenges with that space, considering how lightweight the kind of compute and components tend to be in terms of deploying traditional security controls into it, LPKIs and client-derived certificates, etc. It's actually quite challenging in that market. If you decide that's how you protect your networks and your devices, actually really narrows the market down in terms of how people are looking to support that. And there's a huge amount of bandwidth looking for that lighter weight, more responsive integration and protections, where a lot of those traditional controls either can't be applied or can't be applied rapidly at scale, and where you don't have those traditional assurances and certifications of the organisations providing them you may have relied upon before. So it actually pushes a huge amount of due diligence, investigation, working directly with kind of formative and newer companies that clients aren't necessarily geared up to do and haven't had to do before because they've been able to rely on the work of others. I think it's always interesting that we kind of almost sort of expect kind of defence and intelligence to kind of lead the charge in those areas, but actually when you look at some of those technology strands, retail, manufacturing are actually a lot further down adoption of those type of technologies, and people haven't traditionally relied on them to do the due diligence that other industries would rely on. Quite the same now. So it's a really interesting shift in that landscape around the people you've normally looked at. Say, if it's got their stamp of approval, the answer is I can buy it for my organisation because that means it's good. It's NCSC certified, it's kind of national security and agency kind of approved as kind of stamps of suitability for that. But you haven't normally looked at large scale manufacturers, global logistics firms who in that kind of smart cities, smart logistics tech. Actually, their sensor networks far outweigh what a lot of people are doing in those kind of more traditional hard security sectors. And it's a really interesting one to just be able to flip that model and look at the opportunities changing how we do that assurance. So actually, I think what we're going to touch on later is a lot of this is about being able to actually delayer the networks, but look for opportunities around saying it allows you to revisit first design principles and to really change the way we design and build some of those things. From a skills point of view, that's really challenging because that's about people who can go back to fundamental engineering, fundamental design, and build something again from the ground up rather than revisiting existing patterns. And there's a lot of comfort and assurances drawn from doing what someone else has done first. Actually, now we're looking at saying, you can really disrupt, you can really lay the ground doing things in a new way, but it means you bear the burden of all of the proof.